Okay, well, hello everyone. I'm excited to have you with us today. My name is Kirsten Philpott. I'm one of the health educators here at Healthy Lifestyle. And today we are going to be talking about brain food. This is a book written by Dr. Lisa Mosconi. And I did all the hard parts for you. So I've read the book, I've gone through, I've taken notes, I've listened to lots of different things and read lots of different books to try and get the most accurate and most up-to-date information on when it comes to fueling our brain. A lot of times we think about just fueling our bodies or trying to heal our guts or all kinds of a myriad of other issues, but we forget the importance of our brain. And there's a lot of new research showing that food may be the key to preventing dementia and Alzheimer's. And while sometimes we don't think about it right now, a lot of us probably know someone who has had Alzheimer's or dementia. And when it comes to preventing these kinds of diseases, it starts early, never too late. So we are going to go ahead and get started. But first, a couple house rules while we're waiting for just a few others. Please make sure that your microphones are muted, and if you would like to turn on your cameras, that's great. We'd love to see your faces. If not, that's okay. We're going to cover a lot of information in this workshop. But I'm going to try my best to answer your questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to throw it in the chat. And then, of course, this book discussion is going to be a lot slightly different than my normal book discussions. If you were here last year, I hosted one on atomic habits, and it was very, very interactive, and we had lots of activities. Because of the type of information brain food has, this is going to be slightly different than how Atomic Habits was hosted. But if you liked that format, no worries. We have another book club book coming up that will be hosted next month, all about happier hour. So without much ado, let's get started. I'm going to introduce you first to who Lisa Mosconi is. So since we're about to devote an entire workshop to her book and her research, I figured I should do a little introduction on who she is and what makes her work unique. So Lisa grew up in Florence, Italy, and moved to New York City shortly after receiving her PhD. To understand her work and to ensure I don't miss any of her very, very large biography, I'm going to read just a little part from her website so you can get a better idea of who she is. So Dr. Lisa Mosconi has a PhD and is an associate professor of neuroscience in neurology and radiology, and is the director of the Alzheimer's program at Weill Cornell Medicine in New York Presbyterian Hospital. The program includes the NIH-funded Women's Brain Initiative, the award-winning Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic, and the newly launched Alzheimer's Prevention Clinical Trials Unit. Dr. Mosconi holds a PhD degree in neuroscience and nuclear medicine from the University of Florence, Italy. A world-renowned neuroscience, a scientist, she ranks in the top 1% of scientists of the past 20 years by official metrics. Recognized by the Times as one of the 17 most influential living female scientists and honored in Elle 100 Women That Are Changing the World, Dr. Mosconi has been acclaimed as the Mona Lisa of neuroscience by Elle International. Dr. Mosconi's NIH-funded research is focused on the early detection and prevention of cognitive aging and Alzheimer's disease in at-risk individuals, especially women, using brain imaging techniques such as positron emission tomography and magnetic resonance imaging. Dr. Mosconi is passionately interested in how the risk of memory loss and dementia can be prevented through the combination of appropriate medical care and lifestyle modifications involving diet, physical, and intellectual fitness. She is the author of New York best-selling The Menopause Brain, written in 2024, and the best-selling The Double X Brain. And of course, the book we are here to talk about today, Brain Food, which has been translated into more than 15 languages. She has many more accomplishments, and if you want to learn more, I recommend that you visit her website. She's an incredible woman, has really done a lot of work in this field. And so I want to talk a little bit more about her book. First, though, a trigger warning. My hope with this workshop is that you will have a better idea on how to fuel your brain and how the foods that we eat can make a difference. But that being said, I also want to recognize that anytime we change our diet or learn more about the nutrients we are eating, it can cause guilt, frustration, and defeat. Guilt often comes when we feel like we should be doing something that we are not, or we should have known something that we did not. The frustration can come because of dietary changes that require privilege and access. Privilege to simply afford more and change your food budget, and access to helpful options from grocery stores and whole food stores. And that is when defeat can set in. We realize we cannot eat the way we want, and thus why even try at all. So I'm here to remind you that something is better than nothing, and that you are not responsible for the knowledge you are just learning. It's never too late to make small changes, and we are not perfection seekers here. We are simply learning to gain more nutrition knowledge as we make educated choices. And my last friendly reminder, I am one of your certified intuitive eating counselors here at Healthy Lifestyles. Therefore, whenever we dive into nutrition information, it's also important to remember to not turn our diet into a food rule. So when it comes to fueling our bodies, we do what we can, when we can, and when we want. And the most important thing is learning to respect and listen to our bodies while making informed, guilt-free nutrient choices. So let's dive in. The good and the bad when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia. The good news is that humans are living longer than ever and making massive advancements on what feels like a daily basis. The not so good news, the longer lifespan has brought upon us ailments and struggles we could have never anticipated. Who knew that living longer would mean hearing loss, eyesight loss, decreased health with common medical conditions such as arthritis, rheumatism, and respiratory problems? And then, of course, the reason why most of you are here today is because of the increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Like I mentioned earlier, most of us today probably know someone with the diseases. My great-grandmother died of Alzheimer's at 90 years old, and my living grandmother currently suffers from dementia at age 7. But the good news is that our understanding of cognitive diseases has drastically improved in the last 10 years, and new groundbreaking progress is happening daily. So what have we learned? We have learned that our brain changes decades before we even see a symptom of dementia. That our lifestyle and the things that we eat have a tremendous effect on our brain. In fact, research has shown that modifying behaviors in those with chronic conditions such as heart disease, as well as diabetes, lowered the risk for Alzheimer's by 1/3. That's huge. However, it's important to note that there's no treatment. Once we are showing symptoms of the disease, there is no current proven treatment. And so that is why prevention is crucial. And so we are going to explore what this prevention looks like. And it's important to note that when we're looking at this workshop, we are only focused on the brain. Dr. Mosconi's book only focuses on the brain. And so if you hear information that you're like, well, I've heard that that doesn't do, good things for this organ or for that organ, that's totally possible, and you're welcome to explore those complexities. And that's why it's important to remember that our bodies are complex and uses nutrients in different ways. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. This is where listening to our bodies and doing your best without feeling frustrated or defeated is important. So the first nutrient we're going to discuss is probably the one you're all the most familiar with, which is water. Water is the key to life. All living things need water to survive. Our human brain is no different. It won't matter what we are eating if we're not getting enough water to allow our brain to function optimally. And most of us are actually not getting enough water. On average, Americans drink about 4 cups of water a day, half the recommended 8 cups. We drink 2.5 cups of soda a day and 3 cups of coffee. But what our brain actually needs is clean water rich in vitamins and minerals to help fuel it properly. In fact, research has shown that to simply operate correctly and without impairment, our body requires those 8 cups of recommended water. And anything less than this, even just a 2% decrease in that necessary water, we result in beginning to lose cognitive function. In fact, a recent study showed that students who drank 1 glass of water 30 minutes before an exam performed measurably better than those who did not. So we need water, and we need more than what we are drinking. And while Gatorade or flavored vitamin water or hint or prebiotic sparkling soda water can be great, and it can be a little bit hydrating, when possible, we want to be drinking clean spring water. In America, and I know at least for me, I often filter my water because tap water doesn't always seem the cleanest. That's a-okay. However, when we filter water, we're actually taking out the minerals and the electrolytes that we really desperately need in order to help aid that water in keeping us hydrated. So we want to make sure that if we are filtering our water, that we're then taking some sort of mineral supplement and adding electrolytes back into our diet. Another important thing to note, that if water isn't your thing and the idea of drinking 8 glasses of water just seems terrible, we can do a couple things, right? We can try and flavor it naturally with water, or the National Institute of Medicine of the National Academies has said that we can actually eat up to 20% of our daily water needs. And so listed on the screen, you'll see fruits and vegetables that have a very high water content. So if you don't want to drink all that water, that's okay. Try and eating it, right? There's watermelon, there's cucumbers, there's grapefruit, there's radishes. We can fuel our brain and keep it hydrated by also eating those things that have a high water density. So that's nutrient number 1 and probably the most important. If our brain is hydrated, everything else after this doesn't really matter because it won't be able to operate the way that it needs to. So while you're listening to this, I encourage you to grab yourself some water and sip on it. We have a question, would coconut water count? It's different than flavoring water, hydrating wise. Yeah, so coconut water is actually a great one because it does have natural electrolytes in it. And it will hydrate you as well. So coconut water is an alternative for flavoring as well as hydrating. Okay, so let's talk about fats. You may have heard that your brain needs fat because it is rich in fat. Current diet trends have swung from a low-fat, high-carb diet to a low-carb, high-fat diet. But no matter the trends, what your brain actually needs in regards to fat has not changed. So we're going to try and break it down. Fat is not just fat. There are many different types of fats or lipids, and some have recognizable names such as cholesterol, and others are such things as phospholipids or sphingolipids, which you may not be as familiar with. But the truth is that the unfamiliar fats are probably the ones that make up more than 70% of your brain's fat content. So let's break down to the type of fats your brain actually needs. So there are 2 basic types of fat. You have stored fat and structural fat. Both are important and both are necessary for good nutrition, but only one affects the brain. Stored fat is the fat in large derived out of our diet, and it is what is contained in meats, cheeses, and most other food products. This is what that adipose or white fat is made out of. It is the fat we can see on our bodies that's important when it comes to generating heat and energy. And it's also our portable battery pack, which is necessary for energy and survival. So when your body or when your doctor routinely checks your triglycerides or your cholesterol, this is the fat that we're talking about. This is the fat that's broken down into saturated fat, which generates that heat and energy. But when it comes to the brain, your brain actually contains 0 storage fat and instead contains all structural fat. The rest of our body also uses structural fat, and it is just as essential to storage fat. But the way our body uses these fats couldn't be more different. So structural fat is not utilized for energy and does not float around in our bloodstream. Instead, it's used as structure to our cells and for technical support. To give you a little bit more understanding, I'm going to read directly from the book. So it says, as far as the brain is concerned, brain cells are wrapped in a fatty sheath called myelin, which provides a clever insulation for electrical impulses traveling to and from the brain. Whatever cholesterol the brain contains is found mostly on this myelin sheath, acting as an insulator. Neurons are also enclosed by delicate fatty membranes that are not only protected from the external insults, but also allow signals and nutrients to flow in and out of the cells. These membranes are made of other kinds of fat, like the famous omega-3s and the largely overlooked phospholipids. End quote. So back to the original question, what are we then going to eat to support our brain fat? So we have our storage fat, we have our structural fat, and we've broken that down, right? So our brain is mostly made of all structural fat. And then part of those types of fats that we eat, there are saturated and unsaturated fats. So saturated fats, they like to stick together, they're very rigid, and they are completely covered by hydrogens and often found in items like butter and cream. Think of things that are solid at room temperature. Then there are unsaturated fats. These fats are only partially covered by hydrogens, which means they are easily damaged. So think your oils in your pans, right? Your oils that separate easily that you use for cooking. Now, why did I mention the hydrogens? Because there are different types of unsaturated fats. So there are monounsaturated fats that only have one hydrogen spot open. These are found in your oils, nuts, seeds, and avocados. They're also found in whole wheat and oats. And then there is your polyunsaturated fats. You'll see on the slides, I have that labeled as PUFAs, so P-U-F-A-S. Those are your polyunsaturated fats. And these have many open hydrogen spots, and they're found in oils from plants and marine sources, such as salmon, algae, and some nuts and seeds. So why is it important to note these different types of fat? And the reason why is because your brain is actually incredibly picky about what it imports and exports and does not allow many things into its protective covering. So while our brain uses all of these fats, it does not let very many through. So meaning contrary to popular belief, we can and should be picky about the type of fats we eat when it comes to brain nutrition. For example, our brain only really needs and allows for saturated fats while it's growing new brain cells. So after adolescence, it closes the saturated fats gates and it becomes very selective, only allowing saturated fats such as butyric acid found in whole milk or mystric acid found in coconut oil. After adolescence, our brain produces the saturated fats it needs and does not need help or accept help from our diet. So our brain needs as adults, those are your polyunsaturated fats. These are rare and precious brain essentials. And the brain does not have the ability to make its own. So these fatty acids are in such high demand that as soon as they arrive at the brain gate, the brain lets them in immediately and consumes them. So where can we find these fats? Luckily, Dr. Mosconi really broke it down very easily for us. So what you'll see on my slide is where she broke down the best sources of these fats. So there are two main sources of our polyunsaturated fatty acids. You have your omega-6s, which are pro-inflammatory, meaning they help activate our immune system and protect us from danger. And then we have our omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory and help our body turn down the inflammatory response once the danger has passed. We need both of these. Both are the most important fats to our brain. Omega-3s break down even further into ALA and DHA, depending on their source. Omega-3s that are plant-based break down to ALA, and then from there they break down to DHA. And animal-based omega-3s have the DHA and EPA. The DHA is the most important thing that we can do to help fuel our brain. And so it's important to make sure that we're getting enough omega-3s. Americans naturally tend to get plenty of omega-6s, but just so that you're aware, the goal is 2 to 1. So we want twice the number of omega-6s to omega-3s. However, and it's crucial that we're staying within this balance. Otherwise, our brain can go into inflammatory overdrive, because remember, omega-6s are inflammatory and important, but we only want them to be a 2 to 1. But most Americans average 20 to 30 times more omega-6s than omega-3s. So to make it easier so that you can see where to get these fats, that's where these charts come into. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to eat as many omega-3s as we can to help balance out what we're eating in the omega-6s. And then just to drive home how crucial omega-3s are, in a huge epidemiological study and several now replicated studies, it has shown that people who consume omega-3 rich foods on a regular basis remain mentally clearer and the brain decays slower. The exact numbers are those who ate less than 4 grams of DHA a day showed the highest rates of brain shrinkage, while those who ate 6 or more grams of DHA a day had the youngest appearing brains. Okay, that was a lot of information, so I'm gonna take a pause. Does anyone have any questions about fats? Okay, a couple additional goals when it comes to fat, and this was her largest section of the book, so I'm really trying to like slim it down and give you the too long didn't read section, but a couple more things to know. Saturated fats, we want to simply just try and avoid because it blocks arteries and blocks oxygen flow to the brain. There are also numerous studies linking saturated fat intake to an increased rate of cognitive decline and cases of dementia. So the goal, eat less than 13 grams of saturated fat a day and make them high quality grams of fat, such as free-range organic chicken or eggs or turkey or lean grass-fed cuts of beef, as well as fermented dairy products. With trans fat, just don't do it. Don't eat it. Trans fats are created in an industrial process called hydrogenation, and manufacturers do this to create a very specific consistency that maintains structure at room temperature but melts when it's heated. Trans fats are only found in processed and modified foods and are incredibly hard to spot because manufacturers are able to say as long as there is less than 0.5 grams of trans fat in a serving, you can call it 0 grams of trans fat. But there's not very many people who just eat one serving of anything. And so so there's just not very many people that eat just one serving. So we want to try and avoid that. Things to avoid when you're looking for trans fat, if you look at the ingredient list of items that you're eating, anything that has the word partially hydrogenated or hydrogenated, we want to avoid. So that could be soybean oil, cottonseed oil, palm kernel oil, and vegetable oil and shortening. Most of those have hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated before them. When it comes to cholesterol, which is a hot topic nowadays, but new research has shown that our body produces up to 75% of its own cholesterol and only gets about 25% of it from what we consume. This is a big deal because it means if you struggle with high cholesterol, which has been linked to diabetes and other chronic conditions, eating less of it, which is the most common recommendation, won't necessarily help you. And this is because our body produces most of the cholesterol. So what more and more studies are showing is that instead you're actually better off reducing your saturated and trans fat. And when we lower those, we don't exactly understand the why yet, but lowering those two seem to have a better effect at lowering cholesterol than simply eating less cholesterol. Okay, there was a question in the chat. Do DHA fish oil supplements help? They do. Of course, the recommendation is always going to be to try to get all of the nutrients we need from our food. But especially living in Utah, we live in a landlocked state. It can be really expensive to eat any kind of fish. And so DHA fish oil supplements definitely help. In the book, she highly recommends making sure that you're looking at the actual ingredient list and ensuring that it's just fish oil, and ideally it's coming from wild caught fish. So those were her recommendations in the book. Okay. Our next nutrient we're going to discuss is protein. So protein is the third most important nutrient for the brain. These molecules do most of the work when it comes to structure, function, and regulation of the networks of the brain. Specifically, we need different types of amino acids for the proteins. And we need these amino acids daily in order for normal cognitive function to be carried out each day. Inside our brain is a vast electrical system that is the foundation of how we think, move, and process information. This incredible neurological system has over 80 billion neurons. Each of these neurons have between 1,000 to 10,000 synapses, which are teeny tiny little gaps between the neurons that serve as connection points. In total, there's over 100 trillion connections. This neurotransmission process, in which chemical messengers called neurotransmitters dispatch information from cell to cell. You may recognize the name of some of these neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, serotonin, glutamate, and GABA. Each of these neurotransmitters are incredibly important and do specific tasks, such as serotonin, which is essential for our mood, memory, and appetite. So what does protein have to do with any of this? Well, what happens when we see a decrease in serotonin? A lot of times it's depression. And what could cause this depletion of neurotransmitters? You guessed it, it's food. And our neurotransmitters are created from one source and one source only, and that is amino acids and protein intake. And because of this, the production of our neurotransmitters rapidly respond to changes in our diet, especially our protein intake. So in the book, she really dials into 3 essential amino acids. The first is tryptophan. So tryptophan, just like we talked about, is known for its link. So serotonin is known for its association with your emotions, happiness, sadness, depression, and even affects sleep and appetite. But it's not very well known that serotonin also plays a huge role in memory and has been associated with aging and dementia. But the production of serotonin is tied heavily to the presence of the amino acid tryptophan. So it's crucial that we are getting enough of this amino acid. The current guidelines on the average man or woman is that we need 5 milligrams of tryptophan per kilogram of body weight. So for example, a 154-pound adult, which is 997 kilograms, would need at least 395 milligrams of tryptophan. So where do we find it? Once again, she was wonderful and created this lovely chart for us. So on the chart, what you're seeing are the foods that have the highest level of tryptophan. The CAAs, the sum of the CAAs that you see in the chart, stands for the number of competing amino acids. So the ratio in the last column indicates how much tryptophan is actually available for serotonin synthesis after injected. Typically, less than 10% of the tryptophan we eat will be used to make serotonin, which is why it's so important to make sure we're getting enough of it. So you can see a whole list here of all the things that we can eat that can help with our tryptophan intake, from chia seeds down to edamame. And the way that she broke down all of these charts is that the one listed at the top is the number 1. So that's the one that has the most amount of whatever nutrient we're discussing in the chart. And then the bottom is number 10. So these, out of everything you could eat, these have the highest levels of each nutrient we discuss. Okay, so the next neurotransmitter she talks about is phenylalanine, which focuses on dopamine. So dopamine helps with many of our functions, including our reward, motivation, and attention functions, as well as problem-solving, motor control, and allowing us to feel pleasure. Dopamine abnormalities have been linked to Parkinson's, ADHD, schizophrenia, and drug addiction. And the amino acid we need to ingest to make sure we're getting the proper amount of dopamine is phenylalanine. The recommended dose is 33 milligrams per kilogram of body weight per day. So back to that 175-pound adult example, that's 2.6 grams per day. And so here's your list of where you can find all that phenylalanine to make sure you're getting the correct dosage of dopamine. I do really appreciate that she also breaks down, right? You have your animal sources, your top 10 animal sources on the left side, and then on the right side, you're going to see those plant sources that you can also get them from. And so we'll put it on our YouTube page. Okay. The last neurotransmitter that she focuses on is glutamate. Glutamate is responsible for our action responses or excitatory responses. It's a neurotransmitter responsible for making you load everything into the Amazon cart. And it is also used to produce your alter ego, GABA, which is what allowed you to unload that Amazon cart. So it's a response that helps you not hit buy and instead save your purchases for later. But of course, surprise, glutamate also plays a prominent role in our learning and memory, specifically in the formation of long-term memories. And while glutamate is technically a non-essential amino acid, meaning our brain can produce it on its own, there's a catch. The brain cannot produce glutamate without another key ingredient. And that key ingredient is glucose. So let's talk about carbohydrates. Okay, what is the one thing that keeps our body, including our brain, running? It's carbohydrates. The fad diet pendulum has swung in recent years to demonize carbohydrates and create fear and shame around eating them. But hear me now, loud and proud, our brains need carbs. Now, this does not mean that all carbs are created equally, and we should not go and eat raw sugar by the spoonful. Instead, we need to recognize what our brains exactly need. While our body can use fat and sugar for energy, our brain relies solely on glucose. But like all things that we've learned, our brains are very picky and only grant access to glucose with strict supply and demand gate. That means if your brain needs glucose, it will open the gate. But if it does not, that extra bite of carbs will not make your function any better or any faster because that gate will be closed. So once the glucose is allowed into the brain, it is immediately converted to glycogen and stored, but we only reserve enough glycogen to last us the day. So eating carbohydrates, the amounts we need, is crucial, but we do not need to overeat them because ultimately it doesn't help our brain and in fact can cause a cascade of other issues such as insulin resistance. So like everything, moderation is key. But I want to read a direct quote from the book here, and I actually have it posted on the screen because I think it's so important. So she says, carbohydrates are controversial when it comes to dieting. From the brain's perspective, what differentiates between good carbs and bad carbs is actually the food-specific glucose supply. Glucose has been the main subject of my, meaning Dr. Mosconi's, research since college. Over the years, I've looked at glucose in every possible way, from blood tests to brain scans. Your brain needs it. No matter how many dietologists, doctors, or journalists tell you that carbohydrates are bad for you, the brain needs glucose, and glucose is a carbohydrate. The problem is when most people say carbs, they think white food, sugar, bread, pasta, baked good. And as sugary as these foods might taste, they're actually not a good source of glucose. So what are the best sources of glucose? The best thing to eat to get your glucose is right here. She's created a cheat sheet for us and given us the top 10 natural ranked by their glucose percentage. But how much glucose do we actually need? Unsurprisingly, maybe in the United States, there's actually no dietary guidelines when it comes to carbohydrates and glucose. It may be essential, but we don't know when to stop or how much to eat. But luckily, Dr. Mosconi, after years of research and scans and calculations, has determined that the vital adult brain needs about 62 grams of glucose over 24 hours. In a calorie perspective, that's less than 250 calories a day. And to get this amount, you could do a couple things. You could eat 3 tablespoons of honey, or you could eat 16 chocolate chip cookies. So remember, not all carbohydrates are created equal, and they can have a cascading effects on other part of the body. But a good rule of thumb is, if it's good to eat for your brain, it's good to eat for other parts of your body. In fact, our brain is highly susceptible to sugar highs and lows. So just because it only allows a certain amount of glucose into our brain, when we have excess blood sugar due to insulin resistance, which it's estimated over 86 million have, it can create a high risk for type 2 diabetes, obesity, and heart disease, which puts you at a heightened risk for dementia. In fact, 6 to 8% of all dementia cases are attributed to type 2 diabetes, and heart disease and stroke account for another 25% dementia cases. And then, without going into too much detail, the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that deals with memory, can experience insulin resistance, leading to brain inflammation and the acceleration of free radical productions, making it near impossible to remember anything. So the takeaway, glucose is crucial to brain function, but eat too much sugar and have constant spikes in blood sugar, and your body and brain will pay for it. So pay close attention to what you're putting in your mouth, look at the glycemic index of foods, and choose to fuel your body responsibly. Choose low glycemic, high fiber foods. We need carbohydrates, but we don't need them in the way that they are most readily available. So the goal is to try to reach for whole and unprocessed foods as much as possible so that our brain and our future selves can thank us. Brian, I see your question. A person has to have more if they exercise regularly, correct? Yeah, so carbohydrates, right, they are what fuel our body. And as we exercise, it actually makes us more capable to take those carbohydrates that we're eating and to put them into our cells and to use them for energy. And so we want to make sure that we're getting a balance, right? So if we're eating more, if we're exercising more, we need to fuel our body more, and carbohydrates are our body form of fuel. And so she's not saying don't eat any carbohydrates, right? In fact, she's saying please eat them. It's more the type of carbohydrates we want to eat, right? So when we're exercising, we want to make sure we're basically eating these exact same things, right? We want glucose that our body can use correctly rather than have to work and have a lot more layers to it. So I hope that kind of answers your questions. If it doesn't, you can throw more into the chat. Is apple cider vinegar and or immediate exercise a glucose gatekeeper that neutralizes sugar prior, during, or after eating? I am not well versed in that question. I do know that apple cider vinegar does have an effect on blood sugar, but I am not sure what. I can definitely look up your question for you, Russ, and get an answer for you, but she did not make a note of that in the book. So, but yes, I just understood the last part of your question. Exercise is also an immediate neutralizer to sugar. That is correct. So if you eat your dinner and then walk, that has been shown evidence-based wise to help regulate our blood sugars drastically and helps lower our blood sugar levels. So I'm not sure on the apple cider vinegar, but 100% am sure on the exercise. So that's one of the biggest recommendations right now, actually, is to go for a 10-minute walk after you eat a meal. Okay, so our last but not least that we're going to discuss is our vitamin and minerals. Okay, so vitamins help assist the brain in energy production. There are two types. There's fat-soluble and water-soluble. Fat-soluble vitamins mean they can be stored in the fat of or the body and they don't need constant replenishment. Vitamins include vitamins A, D, E, and K. I'm sure there's others. Those were just the ones she listed in the book. While water-soluble vitamins cannot be stored and are required to be replenished daily. These vitamins include vitamin C, B2, B6, folate, and choline, which are actually also B vitamins. But if you're eating a well-balanced fruit and vegetable-rich diet, getting those fat-soluble vitamins are not usually a problem. So we're going to focus on those ones that we need daily that can be a little bit trickier. So vitamins. So first step is going to be choline. So choline is a B vitamin that the brain depends on to manufacture a certain neurotransmitter that is crucial for memory, learning, arousal, and reward. Almost all Alzheimer's drugs currently on the market work with choline. That's how vital it is. That's how we know this is super important when it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's. The current guidelines are 425 milligrams for women and 550 milligrams for men, which can be easy or hard depending on your personal food rules. So I recommend throwing out all of those and instead listening to your body and listening to the nutrient density. So if you're a woman, you can get 425 milligrams of choline by eating 20 true grapefruit, 3 pounds of broccoli, or by eating 3 eggs. So we need to be mindful when we're choosing our meals because choline matters. So she gave us our list here, and in the book, she definitely has a favorite food. If you want to know what her favorite food is, it is caviar. She really feels that caviar is kind of the end-all be-all when it comes to food. It's a great source of your omega-3s. It's a great source of choline. So she talks about caviar a lot. So if you're a caviar lover and have the money for it, great, eat a lot of that. Okay, the next one we're going to discuss is vitamin B6. B6 is crucial in the production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. And it's so crucial that we get enough B6. However, experts cannot really agree on how much, so we're going to try and shoot for around 3 milligrams. And here is your list. If there's one supplement that Dr. Mosconi talks about in the book, it is the B vitamin. She really prefers everything coming from your food, but she says if for some reason you cannot, getting a complex vitamin B supplement that includes B6, B12, folate, and choline is crucial for your brain. Just remember that when it comes in a vitamin, our brain doesn't and our body doesn't break it down the same way, and so it doesn't actually get to the brain as much as we think. So that's where making sure that we're eating those whole foods are so important. When it comes to minerals, I don't even have a slide for it because she basically says when it comes to minerals, the biggest takeaways are as long as you're eating a balanced diet, the average American gets more than enough minerals. Just be sure that you're replacing your electrolytes because they are crucial for hydration. And if there's a mineral to avoid, excess copper. So if you have more questions about that, I'm happy to try and take them. But she doesn't really spend a huge amount of time on minerals. So those are all the nutrients that we're going to discuss. I have a couple minutes left, and so I just want to cover two more topics that she talks about. So a lot of times when we are spending an entire workshop talking about nutrients, it can get frustrating and we can feel like we don't quite know what to do or we don't have access to all those foods, or maybe they're not a part of our daily diet, and so adding them in can seem stressful. And that's okay. We want to try and take away some of that stress, because other than just eating whole foods, there are other things that we can do. And she talks about this when she talks about blue zones in her book. And we could spend an entire workshop just talking about blue zones because they are fascinating. But to keep it short and sweet, blue zones are places in the world where it is said people simply forget to die. These are places in the world with the oldest populations and the smallest incidences of disease. These are incredibly healthy populations. And there's 5 in the entire world: Okinawa, Japan; Ikaria, Loma Linda, California; Sardinia, Italy; and Nicoya, Costa Rica. And I'm sure I butchered all those names, so I apologize. But one of the things that these blue zones all have in similarities is that they all eat a plant-based diet supported by seafood and clean meat. So even though their diets look very different in the way that they cook their foods, in the way that they season their foods, for the most part, they are all plant-based, supported by seafood and clean meats. But beyond the similarities of their diets, their lifestyles are very similar. They live in incredibly social societies. They eat together, and each meal is an event to be shared. They live slower lives and often nap during the day, which I have learned is very important for our health. So stay tuned. We're actually going to have a sleep workshop based on a book that I'm preparing for you guys, and that will be in December. But on top of napping, they also set aside time to spend time with their loved ones and to really be social. And then, of course, movement. These are communities that do not need to set time aside to exercise because their life includes movement all day, from walking as the main source of transportation to simply just moving their bodies on a daily basis. So while there are many aspects of their lives we may not be able to adopt in our own, we can learn a lot from them and try to implement as much as possible. So hopefully this was really interesting to you guys. Our goal here is to try and slow down, try not to be overwhelmed by all the things I just threw at you. We don't need perfection. We don't need to feel guilty for all the things we feel like we should be doing. Eating in any kind of helpful way is unfortunately a privilege and not accessible for all. But we do want to make this knowledge accessible. These foods feel out of reach, I recommend trying to find just 1 or 2 things that you could add into your diet. Don't go trying to change and eliminate everything. Research shows that is not an effective way to change your diet. Instead, try to find a couple things that you can add in. And yeah, just feel good about it. Feel good about the knowledge we've gained. So, does anyone have any questions? I will try my very best to answer them. Does she mention anything about consuming too much aluminum or fluoride? She does not, actually. It would be in her vitamin and mineral section, and I cannot remember anything being brought up about those. The only one she really talks about avoiding is copper. No problem. Yes, there is a great Netflix series on Blue Zone. So if you want to learn more and reading's not your thing, yeah, definitely head over to Netflix. It's very interesting. It will, Teresa, it will be posted to our website on our YouTube channel. And also send it out to anyone who attended today. I can send an email with the link. Brian, does the author discuss how to effectively increase your various vitamins and other nutrients needs based on the type and amount of exercise? One, she really doesn't. She does spend a whole chapter talking about exercise and the importance of moving. But when it comes to the brain, if I learned anything from the book, she talks about how when it comes to the brain, we have this blood-brain barrier, and basically, as long as we're getting enough nutrients, our brain will take what it needs and then close the gates. She does mention several times she's not focused on any other part of, so the book really does solely focus on the brain. And we know that exercise and movement is incredibly important for our brain health because of what it does for other parts of our body. But when it comes to fueling our body because of exercise, she doesn't touch on that at all. So if you have more specific questions, you are welcome to email me and I can give you answers to those that I can find, Brian. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will let you guys get back to your day. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm glad I could give you this little discussion. And our next book, like I said, we'll be discussing is called Happier Hour. It's by Cassie Holmes, and it's all about adding time into our day when we don't have any time left to add. So join me for that next month. Have a great day, everyone.